Hey everybody, welcome back to Laptop Seniors. Today we're talking about early retirement, and I'm going to go through the math of how you get there, that you can retire early, especially if you're watching this and you're younger, if you're in your 20s or 30s. If you're closer to retirement, the way most people are, usually you start thinking about it seriously when you're maybe 10 years out and you got some things saved. I'm going to go through the math for you too, to actually retire and have a pretty decent retirement, but you don't realize it. And you don't realize it because so many financial analysts and financial people, and you see it on websites all the time, and they, put your age in here, put what you make, cling, there's your answer. You need $1.5 million, you need $1.4 million, you need $1.1 million to retire comfortably. I can tell you flat out, yes, that is correct to a degree, but to a different degree, it's 100% wrong. You don't need that much money. That's an insurmountable number for most people. You probably have what you need right now, but the thinking has got to dramatically change, okay? And we're going to go through that. In order to run you through the thinking, I got to give you a couple stories that happened with me. I retired at the age of 62. I could have called it a day at 55, 56, somewhere in that range, because of the things that happened to me earlier, which I'm going to go through with you. And plus, a really close friend of mine had died, and all he wanted to do was retire at the age of 65, sell his business, which was a great business. He had worked like a dog his entire life. All he wanted to do was retire and have a good life. And somewhere around 64, he got lung cancer and died. Never got to retire, never got to do the fruits of his labor. And I thought, you know what? I am not going to have that be me. So how did I get there? Well, first off, let me start. I left home at the age of 19. This is 1969 when I left, okay? I had $200 in my pocket. I owed $1,500 on my car, and I had a full-time job in a different city, and that's where I went. And the full-time job that I had was, I was making $150 a week. The only reason I'm pointing that out is that, I didn't come from a whole bunch of money. So how did I pull that off? Like what caused that? Just prior to me taking this full-time job and moving away, I'm going to college and I had a part-time job. And at this part-time job, I met this guy, because I'm working like weekends, while I'm going to school, and I'd get done at 6 o'clock in the morning. This other guy would come in at 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd get ready for his shift. One of the things with this particular guy was, and what he makes is important and where I'm going to go with this, he was an alcoholic. This is reality all of a sudden. It's not like school. In the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, he would open up a bottle of beer, pour it into a glass. He would put a whiskey into a shot glass, drop it down, Boilermaker, wolf that thing down. Sometimes he would do two, because his hands would shake like this. And he didn't have Parkinson's. His hands would shake, and then after having the drink, they would stop. So that's the guy, okay? Again, making somewhere between $6,500 and $7,500 a year. Here's the thing. For the late 40s and all of the 50s, and maybe even a tiny bit of the 60s, he was doing $100,000 a year every year, year after year after year after year. That's $1.1 million in today's terms. So this guy's doing $1.1 million for 13, 14 years. I meet the guy, he's at this tiny little junk company in a backwater town, making $6,500 a year, and he's got the shakes. One day, I get done, he comes in, I'm in the back, and all of a sudden, I hear an ambulance and stuff. He had a stroke. I never saw the guy again. They took him out, and that was it. So that's number one. Number two, right at the same time as that, I'm going to school, and I go to a personnel administration class, and the teacher stands up in front, and he's got a tape deck in front of him, and he goes, I'm going to play this tape for you. If you want to leave, leave. I totally get it. You don't have to wait around. When it's done, somebody please turn the tape off, and I'll see you, the next class next week. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. But prior to that, he said something that, always stuck with me for all this time. As a matter of fact, the teacher's name was Neil Whitehurst. He's the only teacher that I know at all that I can remember their name. That's how much that one class, one day, stuck out to me. Okay, because it's coming on the heels of me seeing this alcoholic guy, get dragged away, in an ambulance and never seeing him again, and knowing his story. he plays the tape, and the tape basically is Earl Nightingale, who is a guy that, did tapes, and, he's kind of like Anthony Robbins kind of thing, okay? Basically, he's laying out a ton of facts and Social Security information and wealth information. It's in hours or 45 minutes, whatever, worth of non-stop information of why, without Social Security, most people will never, ever be able to retire, and they might not even be able to exist. And this is making a monstrous impression on me because I had just seen this other guy. All of a sudden, when it come up on retirement and not having enough to retire on, this just becomes instantly the prime directive. Like in Star Trek, I'm seeing this firsthand of what, that tape was talking about. A few years after that, in my third full-time job, in the third different city that I had to move to, a bunch of guys, and now we're like, I don't know, 22, 23, somewhere in that range. I don't know, a bunch of guys are over at one guy's apartment. Somehow we got talking about retirement. And then what would be a good retirement to have, and at the time, because, salaries were so much lower then, and we were all like, wow, if we could have a retirement where we earn $40,000 a year, that would be amazing. So that turned into, and this is where the math starts to kick in, but I'm going to go through math with this again here a little bit more than this. But 40 grand, how were we going to get that when you're retired? And that turned into, well, let's do some math here. The interest rates right now are 10%. You can get 10% pretty much in any bank because that's what they were paying at the time. So 10% of what gives you 40 grand? $400,000, right? 10% of 400 grand is 40 grand, okay? And that's what we're shooting for. Now, again, everything was lower then, but I'm going to show you something that's going to be surprising to you, and you're like, whoa, I had no idea. From that point on, at the age of 22 or 23, whatever I was at the time, it was somewhere, one of those years, earning $400,000 and putting it away, growing a $400,000 nest egg in cash. That was the target for my entire life. Now, the fascinating thing about that, if you're shooting for $400,000, is that you will probably amass that, but you don't know it. Most people probably have it, and I'll go through that when I do the math section, which is right here. Let me give you one more thing. Now, this is way more down the road, decades from that revelation of let's take a shot and try to earn $400,000. Okay? It's 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, and I'm making good money. I'm managing 300-400 people, and and everything's great. And I decide I want to go to Mexico. Never been there. We'd been to Spain and all over Europe, and I like the Spanish language and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, okay, let me go to Mexico. I'll see if I can get a handle on learning Spanish, because I kept trying to do it with books and on-air courses. And anyway, so I go to Mexico. And this is where an enormous eye-opener occurred to me. Part of going to a school, I was in Cuernavaca, and I'm living with a couple, an old Mexican couple. And they had kind of an okay house. The room that they put me in, there was a bunch of other students there. Each had their own room. I mean, it was just brick. The walls were brick. The ceiling was brick. It was, this one lone light bulb, that if there was a breeze, you'd see it go like this. I'm in the room, and it's a pretty decent sized room, and there's a bed, and there's a chair and a desk. And that's when I'm there, and the couple, who were a really nice old couple. It's funny, I'm actually older now than that couple was, but to me they were really, really old at the time. They were like in their 60s. It was Roberto and Poquita. And she was an amazing cook. And what was part of the deal was, for $18 a day, okay, this is really important to you. And this is, I'm thinking, like, what am I talking about this for? This is weird. No, it's really important to you, especially if you're working right now and you've got any apprehension about anything. Let me make this really, really clear for you, and I'll go slow. I was paying $18 a day to live in this room, and there was nothing to write home about, but still, it's a room, it's heated and all that sort of stuff. And I had room and board. She cooked breakfast and she cooked dinner. Now that, in our terms, right now, today, that's about $31 a day. So here's where I'm going with why I'm telling you that. That's about $11,000 a year, or about $960 a month. If you're on Social Security, you're probably making more than $950 a month. And for $950 a month in that situation, you have room and you have food. The rest of the stuff you're on your own. But that's a pretty low amount. It was an eye-opener for me because, not that I was necessarily going to do that, but I didn't rule it out. You know, it's a backup plan, if you will. This is a backup plan that if I really, because I was single at the time, if I really needed it, I could go do this. I'd be fine with it. The other part of it was that, this is sort of a side note to this, if you're retiring, you know, but you're still working right now, I had a super high-pressure job. You know, I worked for someone who, you know, billionaire who definitely was a taskmaster. I loved working for the guy and all that sort of stuff, but it's like you were working. And so there was intense pressure. All of a sudden knowing that I had more than enough savings to live the rest of my life with this older couple, provided they didn't die and I'd have to find another older couple, I could live with them the rest of my life and have a great life. That's as bad as life would get. And it was like, okay, that's pretty darn decent. So after those stories and an idea of how I got to be able to retire early at 62, I want to get to the math now, because you're probably sitting on more assets and more money and able to retire better than you think you can, or actually retire early and how you view it. Okay, let's start here. If you're going to retire early, you have to figure out how early are you going to do that. And I just started out at age 62 and I took it up to age 70 because those are the numbers that typically pop up. 62, 66, 70. And this is mainly for U.S. Social Security. But if you're a Canadian CPP and probably other countries too, it's going to work out the same because they're actuarial figures. And, you know, every country's going to try to spend as least as possible. So let me show you what this is. So see where it says SS Max per month and SS Max yearly? Okay, that's the monthly rate that you're going to get, you know, and what it adds up to over 12 months if you are getting the max of U.S. Social Security. Again, this is U.S. stuff. Now, I know most people don't get the max, but where I'm going with this is you'll see at the end, it's going to hold true regardless of what you're getting. So even if that 2710 at age 62 was 1,500, at the end, it's still going to come out the same. So let me explain this, because this is a big question that you have to answer for yourself. And a lot of it has to do with how long do you think you're going to live? I know that's kind of grim, but this is part of it. So let me show you what I did. At age 62, you get $27.10 a month. That comes out to $32,520 a year. Now, that next number is the difference, the payout, the difference to age 70, okay? So if you look at the figure for this age 70, you'll see it's $58,000, $58,476. See the difference? So the difference between $32,520 and $58,476 is 25 grand, 25,956. That's the difference. If you start retirement at age 66, the difference between what you get for that year is $12,000 a year. Let's keep moving more toward the right. So the total payout gained to 70 years old, in other words, if you started taking it at age 62, when you come up to age 70, the government would have given you $260,000 and another $160. If you take it at age 66, the government is going to pay you $183,000 and $456 between age 66 and age 70. Okay, so that's what you're going to make. Now let's move to the next column, move farther over to the right. How long to get even? Two numbers there, 10 and 14 and a half. Now what that means is how many years to get even for what you've already made versus if you went at age 70, how much, larger the amount that you're going to be getting. In other words, if you retire at age 7, you're going to get a large amount. If you retire at age 62, you get a smaller amount. But the difference in between for those 8 years between 62 and 70, you're picking up $260,000 that if you retire at age 7, you're going to leave behind. You're not going to get that. It's going to take you a while to catch up to that, okay, what you would have gotten up front. That time that it takes is 10 years. So to cut to the chase, if you retire at age 62 versus age 70, getting the max here of Social Security, but any number, whatever you would get, is going to work out the same as far as the years to get even. You need, if you retire at age 62, you need to live to the age of 80 to get even. Or to put it in a different way, only after the age of 80 do you start dropping behind. If you die at age 75 or 76 or 77 or 79, you're going to come out ahead than if you retired at age 70. It's just that simple. It's the same thing for age 66 if you retire then and start getting Social Security at 66 versus 70. The payout, the gain is only $183,000, but there's less of a difference between what you get at 66 and what you get at 70. So how long to get even? It takes you 14 and a half years. Amazingly, if you 14 and a half onto 66 is 80 and a half. It still comes out to 80. So here's the question. You have to assess your own health and your family history and a whole bunch of other things and how you think things are going to go. The question of retiring early and when to take Social Security really starts out with how long do you think you're going to live? Are you going to make 80? Are you going to make 85? Are you going to make 90? How far beyond 80 are you going to get? One other thing to think about here, and it's pretty important really, there's a lot of talk in government that U.S. Social Security is going broke. And you get varying years that come up. It's like 2035, 2032, 2037, somewhere in that range. Now, are they going to kill Social Security? No, that would be political suicide. There's no politician in the world that's going to possibly, cut that out and end Social Security payments. The country would go insane because so many people have paid into it. However, they may actually cut it. So there's one other thing that adds into this for retiring early. Let's say you're age 62 right now and you want to think about taking retirement right this moment, okay? If they start changing Social Security at 2032, okay, that's 8 years from now. So for 8 years, you're going to be pulling that money versus waiting 8 years to your age 70. Because when you get to age 70, all of a sudden that max, and again, it'll work for all numbers, doesn't have to be the max. I'm just choosing the max because these are hard numbers off of the Social Security site. That $58,476 at retiring at age 70, 8 years from now, may not be that at all. Yeah, and I get inflation, it would go up and all that stuff, but that number might be $40,000. But meanwhile, you've been pulling $32,500 for all those years. Now, I'm not making a case for, hey, you should absolutely retire at the age of 62 or age 66. I'm just pointing out numbers that a lot of people don't figure on. And there's really two things here. How long do you believe you're going to live? Because 80 is the magic number. If you can make 80 and you believe it, going early isn't all that bad. If you think you're going to go to 90, then you might want to not go early. And the other thing is, how long is Social Security going to be paying exactly the way it's paying now? How long before they start cutting things? Because you just know the Social Security system is broke. And at some point, they're going to have to do something. Every year, the Canada Employment Insurance Commission, which is one of the government agencies, puts together a list of annual household income for typical families in countries around the world. Here's 72 countries from around the world that you can see what the household income is for a typical family. Now, this isn't a rich family, this isn't a poor family, this is some family that's kind of average in the middle. And a lot of these numbers are not from like right now, 2024. They're like 2021, 2022, 2023, or over the last 3 years, somewhere in that range. They're not exactly super accurate, but then they're not that far off either. So let me go here. If you look at the median income for a household, this is basically the middle, okay? It's not an average, because when average, if somebody makes $10 million and somebody else makes 30 grand, if you average those two together, the number's going to be way higher. A median income is closer to real life. This is what roughly a kind of a family, a person is going to be doing. And again, two-person family, you double it up, all right? So if you just look at the map, all of these countries are making way, way less than these two countries and this country and this country. Okay, you can see that if you are living in one of these two, or this one, or these, and certainly Australia, the odds of you making a way higher income and hopefully a higher Social Security, retirement income pension type thing, and having savings and all of that, your odds are so much higher that if you just decide to bail out of one of these countries and go to any of these other ones that are not this dark, dark blue, you're going to be in way better shape. So let me push this back up again. Median income. Let's just look at the numbers. Luxembourg, 28,000. Again, double this up. Okay, just double the numbers up. So let's just start going down a little bit farther where it really starts to get interesting. So if you're, let's just pull this out and talk. Well, here, let's start with Spain. Spain. So Spain is a big thing for people to retire to, right? Okay, so you double this up for an average middle-class family doing okay. Let's just call this 15 grand instead of 14,695. Let's call it 15 grand. 2 times 15, 30 grand. That's the number you're shooting for to have a middle-class income living in Spain. 30 grand. Estonia, 26. Go down a little bit farther here. Israel, interesting. I mean, given what's going on there, I don't know if I'd want to be there right this moment, but, $25,000 does it. Poland, 22. Latvia, 20. Greece, how many people would like to retire to Greece? Probably a lot. 18,000. Malaysia, so many people retire in Malaysia. Great country, good climate, all that sort of stuff. And this is why. Let's call this 9,000, so it's 18 grand. Uruguay, 14 grand. This is 2021. Right now, this is higher, but still, it's probably closer to $17,000. Again, not that big of a deal. Panama, average person, 14. Again, it's 2021. I'm sure this is now 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. If that was what you're shooting for, that really is a low number for income coming in to be middle class. Even if you triple these numbers or quadruple these numbers, they're still low numbers. That's all I'm trying to point out here. Okay, just before we get into the calculations, I wanted to narrow that list down of the 72 countries into just countries that people would be considering for retirement. I mean, certainly there's more countries that people would retire to. Not everything is on their 72 list. Ones were missing and some of them were obvious, some of them weren't. But I'm just going to pull out the ones that make sense to do for what we're doing right here, and that's going through how you retire early. Okay, let's start crunching numbers, and I'm going to try to go slow here because looking at numbers is always, you're going to start to glaze over. I'll try to make it as easy as possible. Starting from the left, you see 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. Then you go to the next column, 4.6%. And then the next column, 4,600, 9,200, 13,800, those. What that is if you had $100,000 and you had a 10-year bond and it was paying 4.6%, which is easy to get right now, like no problem at all. Good corporate bonds or even government bonds will pay you that for 10 years. And that's what you're going to get per year. So at 100 grand at 4.6%, easy math, you're going to get 4,600 a year. If you had 200 grand, you get 9,200. If you have $300,000, you get 13,800, and so forth up and down the line there. Okay, so that's what those three things are. The next column over the fourth column, you see that 21,204 and 36 cents. That's what all Social Security recipients in the U.S. get. That's everybody. However, see where it says average retiree, 8% higher? An average retiree, as opposed to all recipients, because some of the recipients of getting Social Security, they're on medical disability or some other thing. They're not a retiree. An average retiree gets $1,905 a month. 1,905 times 12 is 22,863. So you get $22,863 from Social Security as an average retiree. Assuming you had $100,000 that you could put into a 10-year bond at 4.6%, you're going to add on another $4,600. So 22,800 adding on another 46, you end up with $2,764. That's what you would make with 100 grand in savings that you're going to be getting interest on a 10-year bond, so you can count on it for 10 years, and an average retiree Social Security payment per year, $27,464. Hold that number in your head. Let's jump down one more rung. Exact same thing is happening, but you're getting more interest. If you have $200,000, now at the end of the year, you're making $32,000. If you have $300,000, you're making $36,000, almost $37,000. And I'm talking about you have nothing else. All you have is that money, the 300 grand, and you have your Social Security coming in. You have no other savings. Let's go down one more level just to make it interesting. We'll go to $400,000 at 4.6% plus the Social Security payment, and you're now pulling in $41,264. So if you happen to have 400 grand, you're going to be pulling in $41,000. Let me just drop down a rung and just say you only have 300 grand, and I'll show you why you probably have that. You have $300,000 that you can put into a bond, and it comes out to $36,664. Here's some countries that I took from the other two websites that I showed you and just put them here. I pulled out the ones where people retire, and this is the household income per year that you would need to live as a middle-class person in that country. So let's compare the 36,664 grand. If you had $300,000 to throw into a bond along with Social Security, all of these countries all of a sudden become yours. Italy, Panama, Spain, Uruguay, Thailand, Portugal, Mexico, Serbia. Serbia actually has a lot of people retiring there, and also Bosnia, Vietnam, Bali in Indonesia, Turkey. All of a sudden, all of these countries become on your radar, and it's doable. Not just skimping by. You are a dead in the middle or better middle-class citizen in these countries. Actually, everything but Italy works on here if you just have $200,000 and you're pulling 32 grand in from Social Security and from the interest on the bond, okay? So you go like, well, wait a minute, man, I don't have $200,000. I don't have $300,000. Well, maybe you don't, but I'm guessing the odds are pretty high that you actually have it. You just don't think of it. So let's move over one last thing where I'm going to show you some housing prices. So where do you get that extra money for that 10-year bond pulling 4.6% or 5.2%? I was just looking at U.S. Treasuries, yesterday as I was about to cut this thing and record, and there's 10-year bonds. So actually you can go out farther, and they're pulling 5. Let's start here. If you have a home, this is an average sale price by state. Now, I'm assuming that you're old. You're going to be 66 years old. You've been working all your life. If you were in Hawaii, you probably bought your home back when you were 30 years old. You've owned it 30 years. It's paid for or mostly paid for, and you're going to get rid of it. And they're going to hand you tax-free $1 million, $1,038,000. That's what it's worth. California, this is a typical home price, 800 grand. Actually, these are probably low for California, but let's just go with these 800. Washington State, 640. Massachusetts, 600. You'll get the idea. I'm going to go through this quickly. Anyway, let's just go down the list. As the prices start dropping, go down one more time. This is the bottom rung, 137,286 for West Virginia. I've actually looked. I was curious for West Virginia, was looking on real estate. There's a lot of homes that are not $137,000. Again, this is an average. A lot of the homes would be mobile homes where, they're selling for like maybe 50 or 55 or 54 here. And then other homes are somewhere in the 200 something range. So I think when you get into this low rung, these 130s, 160s, 177, 180, and up in here, I think you could probably pretty easily add 100 grand to almost all of these numbers. So again, let's just assume you're going to be pulling $300,000 out of that. $300,000 on a 10-year bond paying 4.6% is going to be somewhere around $13,000 to $14,000. You add that onto your Social Security, which is going to be somewhere around 23 grand. Put those two numbers together, and you're probably going to come out somewhere around $36,000, $37,000 a year, and that's assuming you have no other saving. Hold what I've been doing in your head, and then marry that against the countries that we were looking at. Ultimately, that's why you can retire early and go to these countries and have a decent life or a
fantastic life, or if you've really done well, or a spectacular life. And you go like, how's that work out? The key to retiring early, though, for most people, and knowing that you're going to do okay, is you have to leave North America. If you're living in Canada or the US, you pretty much have to leave.
It's funny that it's been 54, 55 years, somewhere in that range, from when a bunch of us were in that guy's apartment. I noted sometimes how that number can actually still work. The dramatic difference is where it will work. It's just that you have to find the right place, the right country, the right town, the right city, the right everything that makes that 40 grand work. Because the 40 grand, as I've gone through with you, that's more still than a monstrous amount of the population of the world. Average people, not people who are super poor, average people make and exist on and have a fine life. There's so many countries where that occurs. You just have to get out of the thought process of, well, I want to do this in North America, because that may, hopefully it's not for you if you're watching, but that may be a big problem right now. That may be a big problem for you 8 or 9 years from now if inflation doesn't subside, which a lot of economists think we're in for this for a good 5, 6 years, that it's not coming down, despite everything that you hear on TV. Anyway, this thing is kind of going on for a while already, and I hope it's helped. If it has helped, hit the like button. That's always good. Hit that notification bell for when the new videos come out. And as always, if you have not already, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. It helps it grow. I noticed that when we did that video on the comparison between Uruguay and Argentina and Panama, because you can see where people are coming from, what countries and all that sort of stuff. I noticed that for some reason, probably because it had Argentina on it. Argentina is a hot property right now for retirement. And I see it everywhere, that people are talking about going to retire in Argentina because of the new guy, and also because everything is so cheap. They don't care about the inflation. They'll deal with it with American money, just like I've explained to you. But anyway, I noticed on YouTube, when you get to look at the analytics, that YouTube itself took that video and they start ramping it up. They really pushed that video, like they're basically broadcasting it out to other people who might be interested. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it. See ya.